Grimble by Clement Freud. Monday. This was a story about a boy called Grimble who was about 10. You may think it's silly to say someone is about 10, but Grimble had rather odd parents who were very vague and seldom got anything completely right. For instance, he did not have his birthday on a fixed day like other children. Every now and then his father and mother would buy a cake, put some candles on top of it and say, "Congratulations, Grimble, today you're about 7. Or, "Yesterday you're about 8.5, but the cake shop was closed." Of course, there were disadvantages to having parents like that, like being called Grimble, which made everyone say, "What's your real name?" And he had to say, "My real name is Grimble." Grimble's father was something to do with going away, and his mother was a housewife by profession, who liked to be with her husband whenever possible. Grimble went to school. Usually, when he left home in the morning, his parents were still asleep, and there'd be a note at the bottom of the stairs saying, "Enclosed, please find 10p for your breakfast." As 10p is not very nourishing, he used to take the money to a shop and get a glass of ginger beer, some broken pieces of meringue and a slice of streaky bacon. And at school he got lunch. That was the orderly part of his life. Shepherd's pie or sausages and mashed potatoes on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and on Fridays fish fingers. This was followed by chocolate sponge, which is a mixture between chocolate sponge and chocolate sludge, and doesn't taste of anything much except custard, which the school cook poured over everything. One Monday, Grimble came back from school, opened the door and shouted, "I'm home!" No one shouted anything in answer, so he went around the house looking for messages, because his parents always left messages. It was the one thing they were really good at. On the table in the sitting room there was a globe, and stuck into the globe were 2 pins, each with a triangle of paper on it. One of these was stuck into England and said, "Grimble," and the other was stuck into Peru and said, "Us." He went into the kitchen and here was another note. "Tea is in the fridge, sandwiches in the oven, have a good time." In the bedroom was a note saying, "You will do your homework, won't you? P.S. Don't forget to say your prayers." In the bathroom a message, "Teeth." He walked round the house thinking they'd been really good, and then went to the back door and saw a note, "Milkman, no milk for 5 days." He changed the note to "Not much milk for 5 days" and sat down in the kitchen and started to think about things. 5 days is a long time for anyone, and especially a long time for a boy of 10 who's never quite sure whether he might not be missing his birthday. It had been weeks since he last had a birthday. He got a piece of paper and worked out 5 days at 24 hours a day and made it over 100 hours, actually 100 and something hours. He decided to have a sandwich. He opened the oven door, found the oven absolutely full of sandwiches, and took one with corned beef and apricot jam in it. It was a bit stale, like sandwiches are when they'd been made a long time ago, so he lit the oven to freshen the sandwiches up. He decided to write a poem about his situation. This is what he wrote. "My situation, by Grimble. When parents go to Peru and leave cups of tea in the fridge, it's jolly hard to know what to do, and I wish I could have a useful word ending in "age." The end. It was not a very good poem, and it hadn't taken very long to write, so he opened the door of the refrigerator and found bottles and bottles of tea. He poured himself a cup and sipped it. The tea did not taste very nice, and it was not very hot, so he took his football into the yard and kicked penalties with his left foot. As a matter of fact, Grimble could not kick the ball at all with his right foot, but very few people knew this, so when he had friends he wanted to impress, he'd say, "Come and see me kick penalties with my left foot." It worked very well. After scoring 107 goals, he went back to get a proper fresh sandwich. He opened the oven door, and a very sad sight met his eyes. The sandwiches had been wrapped in pieces of paper, and the oven had burnt the paper, and all the butter had run out onto the bottom shelf, and the fillings of sandwich spread and peanut butter and honey and lemon curd and cheese and pickles were sizzling in the butter. He got a teaspoon, tasted some of the mixture, decided he preferred Weetabix, but as he was tasting it his eyes fell on another note stuck to the oven door, only a little bit brown from the heat of the roast sandwiches. "In case of emergency," said the note, "go to," and there followed a list of 5 names and addresses, all of them very near Grimble's house. He felt much better, kicked 2 more goals and went off to the house of the first name on the list. "Mr. Wilfred Mosquito, 29 Back Street. Ring twice." Back Street was just round the corner from his house, so he ran over there. and on the front door he found a note which said, "Welcome, Grimble, the key's in the milk bottle." He opened the door, went in and found another note. "Food is in the kitchen. Kitchen's behind door marked kitchen." And in the kitchen there was a big piece of paper which said, "Help yourself." The mosquito's kitchen was big and bright, and there was a vegetable rack with coconuts and bananas and limes in it. Limes are like lemons, only green, and a bottle of rum stood on the shelf, and the fridge had a lot of meat in it, all raw. He tried a sip of rum and didn't like it much. It was strong. So he ate a banana and tried to kick a left-footed penalty with a coconut against the kitchen door, but a big chip of paint came off, and he thought, "I'm a guest. I'm not even supposed to chip paint off the doors of my own house." So he stuck the paint back on the door, using the sludge on the inside of the bananas getting a sticky paste, and he went on an exploration of the house. As far as he could see, the mosquitoes were a man and a woman and one child with a lot of clothes. Or possibly 3 children with not very many clothes. Also 6 cats. He was sure about the 6 cats because he found them in a basket under the stairs. They had a saucer of milk and another saucer of meat that smelled a bit of fish. There was a lot of photographs of people in the sitting room, and all the people in them were black. There was also a map of Jamaica. Grimble, who didn't like to jump to conclusions, but when it came to being a detective was every bit as good as old Sexton B and Sherlock Holmes and Dixon of Dock G, decided the mosquitoes were Jamaicans. He decided this especially when he found a newspaper called the Daily Gleaner printed in Kingston, Jamaica. Reading the paper, he noticed on the front page a message telling you to turn to page 7 for this week's recipe, coconut tart. He turned to page 7. "Coconut tart," wrote the good woman who thought the recipe, "can be made of a child of 8. As Grimble was older than 8, he realised he'd be able to achieve a coconut tart with great ease. He took the Daily Gleaner into the kitchen, propped it against the coconut, and started to read the instructions. "Make the short crust pastry in the usual way," it began. Grimble thought this an exceedingly stupid remark, and was pleased that the writer must have realised this, because she continued, "By taking half a pound of flour, quarter pound of fat, half a teaspoon of salt, and 2 tablespoons of water. Or use one of those ready-made tart cases." "Well, why didn't you say that at the beginning, you stupid book?" said Grimble, and went into the mosquito's garden to try and catch a pigeon. The 4th time he threw his jacket over the fat pigeon's head, gave him a sad, tired look, waddled off and flew away. Grimble went back into the kitchen. "For the filling," said the recipe in the paper, "you will need half a pound of grated coconut, a tablespoon of warm golden syrup, and 2 beaten eggs." He beat 2 eggs and started to look for the coconut. It had gone. He remembered seeing it in the vegetable rack. He remembered kicking it. He remembered that very well because he still had a pain in his left foot. He read several pages of the Daily Gleaner to see if perhaps they said how one could make a coconut tart without a coconut. What he found were pages and pages of small print headed "Work Wanted" and "Cars for Sale." It wasn't until he got to the last page that he found the coconut. It was propping up the paper. Grimble, like most small boys, thought a coconut grew on a piece of metal in a fairground. He didn't know how one turned the hard brown hairy thing that never moved when he threw balls at it into a fluffy white coconut meat that he got in a chocolate coconut bar. He might never have found out if he had not decided to have one more left-footed penalty, using the kitchen table as the goal. The coconut hit the goalpost, actually the leg of the table, and broke in half. As it did so, a large puddle of white coconut milk seeped across the kitchen floor. This was quite a helpful thing to happen. First of all, it showed him where the fluffy white meat was, and secondly, he began to feel he ought to do something about the 6 cats under the stairs, and now there was all this milk. He decided 6 cats was much easier than a cloth and a bucket. Grating a coconut is not as easy as it looks, because the flesh grows on the inside of the shell, and it means wedging it off before you can get at it. Also, the grate had a big notice tied to it which read, "Grimble, mind your fingers." So it was slow business. But in the end it worked. He put the egg and syrup and coconut in the tart case, baked it the way they said, and shooed the cats out of the kitchen. When the tart was cooked, he ate it almost immediately. It was the best thing he'd eaten since the corned beef and apricot jam sandwich. When he'd finished, it was 7:15, and as his official bedtime was 7:30, he went home. When he opened the door, he saw a telegram on the mat. It was addressed to him. He opened it carefully and read the message. "Sending telegram tomorrow. Love father and mother." Just before he went to bed, he wondered why they had not sent the message they were going to send tomorrow in today's telegram, but he got so mixed up trying to work it out that he brushed his teeth, said his prayers, and fell asleep.